You should see an assignment in the World War I module called World War I Imperialism. You'll know you're on the right one when you see this nice handy-dandy colored map. Here's what we're going to do. Very simply, one of you make a copy of the Google Doc that's linked here. Share it with your partner so you can both edit. Figure out who's going to do that job. Don't guess, do. Because she's guessing, you make it, and then we sit here for 45 minutes.
She was already making a copy, so I just said that. Small
Yeah.
You missed one fun trick.
Were you here that Friday when we recorded it? Where'd you turn it into?
Yeah.
Send it to me. Is it a YouTube video? Just whoever has the link, send it to me.
Katie, send me the link to our video.
Email it to me. Okay. You should have that copy up on your screen. So let us put this in context. Okay? These 4 background causes, the main causes, M-A-I-N, are the gunpowder in the keg. They're not going to cause World War I, but they're going to ensure that when something comes along to spark this situation, the explosion is going to be bigger than any in human history. Okay, and I mean that literally. The biggest explosion in human history is going to occur during World War I, and this is going to be by far the deadliest conflict in human history up to this point. Okay? Militarism. What was our example of that from last Monday? It was the only assignment you were responsible for turning in last week, and some of you did not do that.
Yeah, I did.
Whoops.
From our Prussian friends, the angry little guys whose armor is too big for their small bodies. What was our example of militarism? The Iron and Blood speech by Otto von Bismarck. He's the father of Germany. Because he said, if you want to solve your problems, don't cry, don't vote, you don't need democracy. You need a strong army and you need to use it to blow stuff up. And was he good at that?
Yeah.
Did he unify Germany through a series of 3 wars?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's militarism. Build up your army and use it a lot. Now, add to this an alliance system. Okay, if you guys haven't seen, I can show you this real quick. Your guys' alliance system from Wednesday. You didn't see this. Mr. Ames sat in the back in every treaty that you guys turned in that was signed. He added to this. Now, refer back please to the first word I used in my made-up definition. Does that fit? Intertwined? I would say so. Okay? And during our simulation of alliances last Wednesday, even though you guys, I have to congratulate you, were the most peaceful class I've ever had. You almost figured out the secret to winning, which I won't tell you because 4th period still has to do it today. What happened was Team A and Team B. Basically, you were either on this team or that team. There was no one, did anyone go the Switzerland route and say no friends, we're staying out? Nope. So what you guys did is exactly what the alliance systems in 1914 are going to cause. 2 huge sides, so that some little friend of yours starts a fight, you get pulled in, and now everybody's pulled in. So it causes the size of wars to increase drastically, and you're going to get sucked into other people's drama. If you didn't have those alliances, just like friendships in high school, you wouldn't get sucked into most of the drama that you get sucked into, right? But with these alliance systems, you're going to get 2 huge opposing sides, and the war is going to be deadly. Okay, there's no more country on country. It's me and all my friends against you and all your friends. So, the next load of gunpowder we're going to pour in the keg today is imperialism. Okay, and some of you guys don't watch Game of Thrones, but it's kind of like the lesson from history that everyone wants to be the most powerful. That's pretty much human history in a sentence. Everyone wants to be the biggest, baddest, richest, strongest, whatever. 1914 is no different. So what countries are going to do is try and expand their empire, okay, and build it up so they get more natural resources, more manpower, more prestige, more naval bases, whatever. Okay? How I like to explain this is with a parable. And you guys remember parables when we studied Christianity. It's a story about seemingly random stuff like sheep and shepherds, but then there's a lesson, and those seemingly random things stand for something else. You guys remember parables? Okay, here's my parable of imperialism. I don't think I told you guys this. Did I tell you about my neighbor? My neighbor Bob?
Maybe.
You'd remember. Okay, close your laptop lid halfway so I know you're listening. This part is true to the letter except names. Now, Bo Hansen is my neighbor. He's not Bob in this story. Coach Donnell is my neighbor. He's not Bob. It's a different neighbor of mine. We'll call him Bob. Okay? Bob's been my neighbor since I've lived in Marbleton for like, I don't know, a year and a half, we'll say. He's a nice guy, but he wears on your patience. Couple things he does. Number one, he has 4 dogs. One of them is huge. It's about the size of me, and I'm not exaggerating. That matters because every day, multiple times a day, he lets his dogs outside to come into my front yard to crap all over it. And one of them is about the size of me. See why that detail's relevant? In the year and a half that I've lived next to Bob, he nor his wife have ever once come over to clean up their 4 dogs' crap. Not once. Okay? It doesn't really matter except for you have to picture this. In the summertime, he likes to do stuff outside. He's a large man. I'd say 350 easy. Okay? He likes to wear an American flag bandana, no shirt, and sweatpants. And he's an easy 350. Okay? While doing that stuff in his yard, he likes to listen to ultra-patriotic country songs. He fits every stereotype of big piney people to the T. Okay, Tim's laughing because this is what they think Americans are like back in Germany. He always comes over and wants to borrow something from me, like, hey, can I borrow your tools? Can I use this? And he also loves to ask if he can leave stuff in my garage. Like, hey, can I put my lawnmower in there until I use it next? And it puts me in a weird situation because I want to be a nice neighbor, but this guy, as you can see, is really, really annoying. Okay? Now, all of that is true. Here's the part that isn't true, because I get paid a teacher's salary. Let us pretend that to get away from Bob, his annoying request to use my garage, and his dogs crapping in my yard, I buy a cabin up in the mountains. And every weekend, I say, just to get away from Bob and have some peace and quiet, I go to my nice cabin in the woods. Does that sound like a good plan? It sounds like a good plan. Until 3 or 4 weekends into your cabin, okay, you get woken up by a knock on the door. Cabin door, remember, we're up in the mountains. And here's Bob, American flag bandana, no shirt on, sweatpants, and his dog is crapping in that yard of yours. And he says, hey neighbor, what you doing? And you're like, Bob, what are you doing up here, man? I bought a cabin. He's like, yep, me too, we're neighbors. Again. That cabin right there, just bought it. Can I borrow your tools? Okay, so you go and you're like, oh my goodness. If I'm at home, he's my neighbor, and his dog is crapping in that yard. If I go to my cabin, he's my neighbor, and his dog is crapping in that yard. So what would you do if you had a big budget? That's right, you'd buy a vacation home in Mexico, right? Just to get away from Bob. So you go there for spring break, you get a week off. 3 or 4 days in, you get awoken by a knock at the door. And here's Bob, okay, American flag bandana, no shirt on, sweatpants, and his dog is crapping in your vacation home's yard. And he says, hey neighbor, what you doing? I'm like, Bob, seriously, what are you doing in Cozumel, Mexico? He goes, oh, I just bought a vacation home right next to yours. Okay, now here's my question. No matter where you go, home, cabin, vacation home, you're going to run into him. He's on your nerves, he's borrowing your stuff. He's blaring his patriotic country music. His dog's crapping in your yard. What is the likelihood of a conflict breaking out? Shooting him is a possibility here. Now that no matter where you go, he's there asking for your stuff and bugging you. What has happened to the likelihood of a conflict breaking out between myself and Bob?
It's gonna raise exponentially.
At least by 3. It's gone way up, do we agree? Because everywhere you go, he's getting on your nerves. Now, what does this story have to do with anything, especially causes of World War I? Like, cool story, Mr. McKelkey, but what's that have to do with anything?
I don't know, we're trying to handle it.
What's the lesson from this parable? Okay, remember when we looked at parables, we said first things first. Every object or person stands for something, right? From parables. Okay, anyone know who myself or Bob might be in this parable leading up to World War I? Tim must know because he's one of them.
Yeah, maybe at Germany. Or
Okay,
like
who's
another-
Germany? You pick. Yeah, I know who you, because Germany's the good guy
Yeah,
here.
I think it's more like war because they're like because they don't start everything twice. They just we need something so they go there and
Yes,
just make everything.
that's a very good choice. Let's say in this analogy, the annoying fat neighbor whose dog craps in your yard, that's Germany. Who must I be then? Who's their real neighbor? That they got their butts kicked in 1876 by the Germans. And the German Treaty of Unification was signed in their Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. France. I'm France. Bob is Germany. Very good. Now, what's with the 3 different homes? Home would be Europe. That's continental Germany and France. We're neighbors. You bug me. Okay? What's with the cabin and the vacation home? Where are you expanding your empire? Oftentimes, especially at this point in history. Okay, did you guys see the map on this assignment? You think I just put stuff there because it's cool. It is cool. This, especially Africa, looks like a bag of Skittles. Okay? The only stuff that's independent in Africa that hasn't been colonized by a European power is the gray. What does that tell you about Africa up until 1914? Think of our parable here. You got home, okay? Germany and France are neighbors here and they hate each other. Do you see red and blue next to each other somewhere? What's that in our parable?
The cabin.
That's your cabin. So you go to Africa just to colonize and rape and pillage their natural resources, and guess what? Your neighbor follows you there. Now you're butting heads against them, fighting over African land here. And if you look at the rest of the world, like Southeast Asia, do you see blue and dark red next to each other anywhere else? That's your vacation home. So it's kind of like no matter where you go, those pesky, annoying Germans are there bugging you, butting up against you. Do you see what that does to the likelihood of a conflict between you and those pesky Germans? It goes up drastically. Here's the last thing that's relevant. What are these empires? So look at the French Empire. They got a big chunk of blue right here in Africa. Or the British, this red stretches from New Zealand all the way to Canada. Hence the saying, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Because it's noon somewhere in the British Empire, because their empire stretches from ocean to ocean. What are they getting out of this colonizing game? Like, why go to Africa and colonize it? What do you get as an empire?
Resources?
Bam, natural resources. Which, according to that idea of needing a strong army, besides manpower, what do you need for a strong army? Factories from the Industrial Revolution that use natural resources like coal, like copper, like steel, like rubber. Where do you get that stuff? Your overseas colonies. Okay, so if you look at this powder keg diagram, everybody wants to fight and build up their army. Everybody is in this intertwined system of alliances, and now everyone's competing overseas, butting up against each other, getting richer and getting more resources. Okay, tomorrow what will happen is sort of the icing on the cake. Everyone also thinks they're better than everyone else. Okay? All we're going to need next week is a little tiny spark to this huge explosive situation. So these don't cause World War I. They're adding more explosives to the equation. That all we need is a little spark. Okay? So imperialism didn't cause it. It's going to make it bigger, more deadly. and you're going to see this annoying neighbor Bob is exactly like Kaiser Wilhelm from Germany, okay, if you're French. So here's what we're going to do. You should have a copy, not of that document, of this document, okay? Just to clarify, it looks long, do not be intimidated. We are going to get this done in class. You will turn it in, unlike some of you did with your Iron and Blood speech last week. Okay, you're not going to leave here today until you get this done, which is very realistic. It looks long if you scroll down. Stuff that's highlighted is going to have a question coming from it. When you see the list of countries where it says global empires in 1914, bold, 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 it just lists, here's what territories those countries have in case you're curious. Okay, and then there's like one other big section at the bottom. So really this is only 2 pages long if you took out that list. What we'll start with, the 6 questions at the bottom, okay, you and your partner read question number 1 to yourself. You'll see the yellow highlighted questions at the bottom, there's 6 of them. Read the first one to yourself. Now there are lots of parallels between 1914 Europe and being a high school student, because alliance systems, that's like who your friends are. The whole thing about getting drug into other people's drama, that really rings true to high school students, right? You can relate to these countries. Here's what I see number 1 as in your terms. So, you want to be cool. What do you have to do to be cool? At this point, if you want to be part of the cool guy club, even if you're not in Europe, Japan and the United States play this game too. To be cool as a country, what do you have to do? Build an empire. Okay. How do you play this game that makes you a cool country? And if you want to get in on this game, how do you start? No. That's only if the native people resist, which if you point your ship's cannons at them, they probably won't. Okay? So, you know what you're looking for. What's imperialism? And how do you go about establishing new territory for your empire? So if you scroll up, start at the top, it's going to give you that right away and you know what you're looking for. So you and your partner have a system. You can do it together and read it out loud. You can split it up and say, you start with the last question, I'll start with the first. Okay, I will tell you the last question is kind of tough. And I have a map of Europe to help you when you get to that, and we'll talk about it and make sure we're on the same page. Then we'll turn it in and be done. Okay, you'll also notice I put grades in this morning. Some of you, your dreams were crushed. That is your own doing. I will not apologize for that. Get it done if you didn't do it.